You think you're waiting for it. You are not waiting. You have already assumed something about it, and your life has been answering that assumption the entire time. That is the part no one tells you. You believe the thing you want is in the future, held back by money, by timing, by the right person, the right break, the right moment. It is not held back by any of those. It is held in place by what you have quietly accepted as true about yourself. The outer world is not the cause, it is the effect. The cause is the state you are living from, and you have been living from absence while calling it realism. Look at how it actually runs. You say you cannot feel wealthy until the money is there. You cannot feel chosen until someone arrives. You cannot feel successful until the proof shows up. So you wait for the outer world to give you permission to feel a certain way. But the outer world is only showing you the state you are already in. It is a mirror, and you are standing in front of it, unchanged, asking the reflection to smile first. This is why wanting never works. Wanting is not a step toward having. Wanting is the announcement that you do not have it. Every time you say you want it, you confirm the distance between you and the thing. And consciousness, which does not argue, keeps that distance exactly where you placed it. You have been faithful to a single assumption, not the assumption that it is yours, the assumption that it is not yet. And it has appeared, on schedule, as not yet. Here is the mechanism, stated flat. What you accept as true about yourself becomes the state you occupy. The state you occupy becomes the world that reflects back to you. You did not get the life you wanted. You got the life you assumed. And those are almost never the same thing. So the secret is not to want it more, not to hope harder, not to work yourself into exhaustion forcing it. The secret is to assume it is already yours, to move now into the state of the person who already has it, before the evidence, before the proof, before anything visible changes at all. That word, assume, gets misread. It does not mean pretend. It does not mean lie to yourself. It does not mean ignore what is in front of you. It means accept inwardly that what you want already belongs to you in consciousness, and let that acceptance set your state. Watch what happens to someone who receives the news they were waiting for. They stop searching. They stop straining. They stop refreshing the page. There is a settling, a quiet, a certainty that the thing is done. That settling is the state, not the news, the state the news produced, and the work is to occupy that state before the news, not after it. If you value understanding the structure behind your own mind, subscribe. These conversations are not isolated, they build. Now understand why this is hard. The mind has been trained to trust appearances. If the account shows a number, the mind calls it the truth. If the person is not here, the mind calls the absence reality. If the work has not arrived, the mind calls it the final verdict. But appearances are not facts. They are shadows. They are the visible expression of an assumption you already made. You keep treating the reflection as the cause, and so you keep trying to fix the reflection, adjusting your behavior, chasing outcomes, while the state that produces all of it stays exactly the same. There is a difference between wanting and having, and the whole thing turns on it. Wanting implies separation. The thing is somewhere else. Distant. Not yours. Having implies possession. The thing is here. Settled. Already accepted. Most people live in wanting for years and call it desire. They want success. They want abundance. They want love. And wanting keeps all of it in the future, where the future never arrives, because attention stays fixed on the absence. The one who assumes it is already theirs has left wanting. They have entered having. Not because the proof came, because the state changed first. And from that changed state, something begins to move. The same power you already use against yourself is the power being described here. Watch how fear works. You fear an outcome. You rehearse it in detail. You assume it will go wrong. And when difficulty arrives, You call it confirmation. I knew it. But the order was reversed. The assumption came first. The experience followed. Fear is assumption, aimed at what you do not want. So the question was never whether your assumptions shape your life. They do. They have been the whole time. The only question is which ones you keep choosing to occupy. Listen to your inner conversations. Most people spend hours each day quietly arguing for their own limitation, rehearsing why it cannot happen, revisiting old disappointments, retelling the story of what went wrong. Every repetition is a vote. Every repetition reinforces the exact state they say they want to leave. Your inner dialogue is not idle. It is a confession of what you have accepted as real. And the world is built from what you have accepted, not from what you say you prefer. So the work is to let the inner conversation imply the wish already fulfilled, not forced, not loud, just consistent, spoken from the standpoint of having, not the standpoint of lack. And this needs the patience of a planted seed. You do not bury a seed and dig it up each morning to check it. You leave it in the dark. You trust the process you cannot see. The assumption works the same way. Once accepted, it has to be left in the ground. Most people cannot do this. They assume the state for a few minutes, then immediately turn to the outer world for confirmation. They check the account. They check the phone. They check the room. And when the proof is not instant, they call the assumption a failure and dig the seed back up. If the assumption is truly accepted, there is nothing to check. The certainty is its own evidence. Consider how naturally you already assume. You assume the sun rises tomorrow. You assume your name is yours. You assume 100 quiet facts about your life without strain. They feel natural because they have been accepted, repeatedly, until they stop needing defense. That is the target. To make the desired reality feel as ordinary as your own name. Comment this. I assume it is already mine. At first, it will not feel natural. The old assumption will push back. Doubt will arrive. A voice will say, nothing is changing. That is not a sign you are failing. That is the old state defending its territory. Because here is what is really being moved. It is not a circumstance. It is an identity. You do not only assume that things are scarce, you assume you are the kind of person for whom things are scarce, and that is the part that holds. A condition can change overnight. An identity does not. You have rehearsed being the one who lacks, the one who waits, the one it has not happened for yet. That figure is practiced, familiar, automatic. So when you assume the new thing, you are not adding a thought. You are challenging a person, and the person you have been will fight to keep existing. This is why people quit so fast. They begin with enthusiasm, imagining the life they want. A few days pass. The outer world looks the same, and they return to the old thinking, the old reactions, the old story about what is possible for them. Then they wonder why nothing changed. Nothing changed because the seed was never left in the ground long enough to take. The old state feels more natural only because it has been practiced for years. A person who has lived in struggle will find peace uncomfortable at first. A person who has expected rejection will find acceptance hard to believe. A person who has identified with limitation will feel exposed imagining abundance. This is not a sign the new state is false. It is a sign it is new. And new becomes natural only through return. Every time you go back to the feeling of having, you weaken the old identity and strengthen the one you are building. Say plainly what this costs. It costs the comfort of the familiar self. The self that lacks is known. It asks nothing of you. It has an explanation for everything. The assumed self asks you to feel, right now, with no proof, like someone you have never been. That feels like lying. It is not lying. It is the only condition under which your state has ever changed. The feeling came first, always. The evidence came second. You wanted the evidence first so the feeling would be honest. It has never once worked in that order. Now, understand the real test. It is easy to feel wealthy when the money is visible. It is easy to feel chosen when the affection is being expressed. It is easy to feel successful when the results are already in. The test is whether you can hold the state when the condition is not yet there. Can you feel provided for while the appearance says lack? Can you feel chosen while there is no confirmation? Can you stay certain while the world hands you reasons to doubt? The one who can discover something most people never touch. Their circumstances stop dictating their state, and their state begins to dictate their circumstances. Watch what desperation does. Desperation pushes the thing away, because desperation is rooted in the assumption of absence. It announces, in every move, that the thing is not yet yours. Confidence does the opposite. Confidence is rooted in the assumption of possession. One state says, I hope I can get this. The other says, this already belongs to me. The difference looks small. The results are not. The person living in hope alone keeps their attention on the future, always waiting, always expecting it later. Fulfillment is permanently postponed. The person who assumes it now draws the feeling from the present. They stop treating the having as a destination and start occupying it as a state. And that changes everything downstream. Decisions get clearer. Reactions get steadier. Opportunities get more visible. Not because the world rearranged first, because the one perceiving it is no longer operating from lack. People search endlessly for the technique, the special method, the exact formula, the right ritual. But the technique is not the power. The state the technique is performed from is the power. One assumption held with certainty outweighs 100 techniques practiced with doubt. Two people repeat the same words. One says them mechanically, secretly believing nothing will move. The other says them while feeling the reality they imply. From the outside, identical. Inside, two entirely different states. And it is the state that produces the result. The words only matter for the feeling attached to them. So stop asking how it will happen. The mind becomes obsessed with the path. It wants every step in advance. It wants the guarantee. It wants to see the road before it moves. But the most decisive things in a life arrive through channels no one could have predicted. An opening appears, a meeting lands at the exact moment. A door opens from a direction you never watched. You are not required to engineer the route. When you board a plane, you do not fly it. You accept the destination and let the journey carry you. The assumption is the destination. The route is not your job. And do not underestimate imagination, because that is where this is decided. People treat imagination as fantasy, as the opposite of what is real. But every building was first an idea. Every invention was first a concept. Every life you admire was first a picture in a mind. Imagination is not an escape from reality. It is the workshop where reality is made. When you imagine yourself already being the person you intend to become, you are not pretending. You are setting the pattern the outer world will later copy. This is why changing conditions alone never holds. Most people try to change the results while keeping the same concept of self. They want wealth while still identifying as someone who never has enough. They want love while still identifying as unworthy. They want success while still identifying as someone who cannot. As long as the identity stays the same, the world keeps reproducing the same pattern. The change comes when you begin to see yourself differently. Ask the real question. Not what would you have if the wish were fulfilled. Who would you be? How would you think? How would you react? What would you quietly expect from life? That points to a state. Find it and return to it until it stops feeling like a performance and starts feeling like you. There is a point where the new state no longer feels like an act. It feels normal. It feels obvious. It feels like the truth about you. That is usually when the visible changes accelerate, because the outer world responds fastest to what feels natural inside you. If wealth feels unnatural, the mind finds reasons to push it away. If success feels unnatural, openings get overlooked. If love feels unnatural, it gets quietly sabotaged. As the assumed state becomes natural, the resistance falls, and life begins moving in a different direction. Notice how a child receives more easily. They imagine without resistance. They do not analyze whether it is possible. They step fully into the imagined thing, and it feels real to them. Most adults lose this. They learn to believe only what they can already see. Their imagination gets fenced in by the past. The power did not leave. It is just out of practice. Learn the difference between two phrases, thinking of the end and thinking from the end. Thinking of it keeps the thing separate from you. You stand here, it stands there, and you long across the gap. Thinking from it means looking at today as though the wish were already fulfilled. If it were already done, how would you read today's events? How would you see the delay? How would you carry yourself? The more you think from the end, the more the fulfilled state becomes your default. And from a fulfilled default, your reactions change on their own. You stop forcing positive thoughts because the identity producing them is shifted, and do not let time intimidate you. People say it has been too long. They say if it were going to happen, it would have happened by now. They measure possibility by the calendar. But the length of an absence does not decide whether something can appear. What decides it is the state you keep occupying. A person can want something for 10 years and stay exactly where they are because they never left the state of wanting. Another can enter the state of having and watch it move in weeks. The difference is not time. The difference is identity. The world teaches that seeing is believing. The deeper order is the reverse. Believing comes first. Seeing follows. What you genuinely accept as true eventually becomes visible. Every assumption is a blueprint, and the visible world follows the pattern consciousness hands it. And look closely at what you inherited. Most of your assumptions were never chosen. You grew up hearing what is realistic, what is practical, what is impossible, what someone like you should expect. Repeated enough, those ideas became assumptions. Accepted without question, they began to feel like facts. But a belief feels like a fact only because it has been practiced. The moment you see that, you are free in a way you were not before. Because an assumption can be revised. If you inherited lack, you can accept abundance. If you inherited failure, you can accept achievement. If you inherited struggle, you can accept ease. You are not required to stay loyal to assumptions you never chose. Expectation is just assumption pointed at the future. What you expect reveals what you believe. Expect rejection, and you quietly prepare for rejection. Expect disappointment, and you arrange yourself around it. Expect fulfillment, and the mind begins lining up with that instead. Expectation shapes what you notice, what you ignore, and how you read what happens. Two people meet the same event. One reads it as proof that failure is coming. The other reads it as temporary. Their assumptions wrote their reactions. The one who assumes the outcome is already theirs does not panic at a delay. They do not treat every obstacle as a sign something is wrong. They stay anchored in the conviction that the thing is settled. And that stability is rare, because most people are reacting to appearances every hour. Good news lifts them. Bad news drops them. They never hold a steady state long enough for it to express. The one who understands assumption holds a different relationship with circumstances. They know appearances are temporary. They know conditions are reflections of an earlier state. So they refuse to surrender the chosen assumption every time an unwanted thing appears. This is not denial. It is reading life from a higher vantage, where every event is part of a process unfolding from inner conviction. There is real strength in staying faithful to a state that has not yet appeared. Most people abandon the desire at the first contradiction. They treat the obstacle as evidence against the dream. But an obstacle is often only the persistence of an old assumption, an echo of a state you are already leaving, a remnant of an identity on its way out. See it that way, and it stops being a verdict. This is why inner discipline matters more than outer control. You cannot always control events. You cannot always control people. You cannot always control timing. You can control the meaning you assign. You can control the assumption you accept. You can control the state you live from. And that choice is never idle, because the assumptions run whether you are watching them or not. Every day you imagine outcomes, you predict conversations, you rehearse what is coming. For most people, that rehearsal is aimed at what they do not want. They imagine the failure before the chance arrives. They imagine the rejection before they speak. They practice the exact reality they are trying to avoid. Turn that same power the other way. Imagine the outcome favorable. Anticipate the thing working. Rehearse fulfillment instead of lack. The inner world shifts, and what shifts inside eventually shows up outside. The mind becomes what it keeps contemplating. Contemplate limitation, and limitation becomes familiar. Contemplate possibility, and possibility becomes familiar. This is why the inner image matters so much. The picture you carry of yourself sets your expectations, your feelings, your moves. Carry the image of someone who already succeeds, already loved, already provided for. Hold those not as fantasies, but as states already real in consciousness. From there, you stop approaching life from insecurity. You stop hunting for proof of your worth. You stop needing the constant validation, because the identity already contains what you were trying to earn. People look for confidence in achievements. They think it arrives after the success. But real confidence usually comes first. It comes from accepting a new concept of self before the evidence shows up. Once that concept is stable, the achievements follow, as expressions of who you are, rather than attempts to prove who you are. That distinction changes everything. When worth is chased through results, you stay dependent on results. Your sense of self rises and falls with them. When worth is accepted inwardly, the results become reflections, not sources. So the secret was never in the circumstances, not hidden in a future event, not waiting in a distant place. It is in consciousness itself. Every condition you want already exists as a possibility. The only question is whether you will accept it as yours. Not tomorrow, not after enough proof, not after the last doubt is gone. Now, in imagination, where everything is made first. The moment you accept it inwardly, the lens changes. Familiar situations carry new meaning. Old fears lose some of their grip. New possibilities start entering awareness, and slowly, almost too quietly to notice, the inner world reorganizes around the assumption you chose. Comment this: I stop wanting it. I assume it is mine. Not as a wish, as recognition. Because most people spend their lives wanting the thing and proving, every day, that it is not here. Few ever quietly accept it as already theirs. So leave with the structure named. You do not attract what you want. You express what you are conscious of being. You did not lack effort. You did not lack desire. You assumed its absence, held that assumption without interruption, and watched the world agree with you. Change the assumption, and the world has nothing to do but agree with that instead. Stop chasing. Start assuming. Stop longing. Start having. And what is only lived in your imagination will do the one thing it has always done once a state is truly accepted. It will appear.